Welcome back. I hope, as usual, you are doing great. In the conceptual class, we understood about the aggregations. We started looking at the aggregations by looking at count, count distinct, and approximate count distinct. We'll take examples and see how all these things can be used as a part of this hands-on class. First and foremost thing is we will create a data frame. To create this data frame, instead of using only one file, we'll use multiple files so that we'll get a better sense of aggregations. So we have so many files as a part of this folder. What we'll do is we'll read all these files. How do we read them? Very easy. I'll show you. Copy this path. And after this, say star.csv because all the files in this folder are with the extension .csv. Then we are using a coalesce and we are specifying a file. As a part of that, we are saying restrict the partitions to 5. We'll go ahead and execute this statement to create a data frame by reading the data from multiple files. Let's go ahead and do this. It will take some time because it is reading multiple files. Wonderful. Let us see what is the data here. If you have any data as a part of this, I'll show only 5 records. Yes, we do have a data. And to check which are the columns, either we can show the data and see which are the columns. You can see invoice number, stock code, description, quantity, invoice date, unit price, customer ID, and country. And one more way is go ahead and print schema. There you go. You can get the column numbers and what is the schema by printing the schema as well. Now we got to see the aggregations. Within that, one of the aggregation is count. If you want to count all the records in a data frame, simple ways df retail and say count. There you go. We do have 5,41,909 records because we have read more than 100 files to create this data frame. Now we are looking at the big data, right? A little bit, the beginning of the big data. But to understand the concepts, you got to play with the smaller files here because we need to showcase or practice aggregations. It is better to have multiple files. We did a count. Count is one of the aggregation. See, it has taken multiple columns and it has given us the single output. Wonderful. Next is here we have done a count of a whole data frame. What if I want to count only the one of the column? It's very easy. All we can do is say df retail. You can choose any one of the column from here. Let us choose quantity. And you can say show. It says count is not defined. What do we need to do? We have to import these functions. How do we do that? By our .sql.functions package. Let's go ahead and do that first. I have indicated multiple times. We can import all these functions very easily by saying import star. But I want you to know what you are importing, what you are using. That's the reason I am importing them one by one. Let's import this. We are done. And our count should work now. There you go. Here, the count of a one particular column is same as that of the count of the whole data frame. What it means is there are no null values. We'll get into the null values in a couple of minutes, but before we really get into that, let us see other two functions as well. We'll reuse this and say instead of count, let's go ahead and say count distinct. As we know, the count distinct will count only in the distinct values in that column. There you go. In this column, the number of records are 5,41,909. But within those many number of records, distinct values are 722. If I want to see what are the distinct values in any of the column, we can do this. You can choose other columns also to get the distinct values. For example, let us choose some other column. What other columns? Let's say customer ID. Let us choose this and see how it works. So this here. We're trying to get the distinct customer IDs. The count of the distinct customer IDs. All of these functions look very, very simple, but you got to remember them. How do you use that? We have out of again 541,909 records, we have 4,372 distinct customer IDs. Wonderful. The last one what we have to see here is approximate count distinct. The usage is same except we got to specify what should be the maximum error factor allowed here. Let us repurpose this. Save this. Let's go ahead and queue this. So the original count distinct of a quantity is 722. Here we have 692 when we are approximating it. As I said, we are providing what is the maximum error allowed here. If you want, you can vary this factor and see how it is reflecting on the count. Wonderful. We have seen count, count distinct, and approximate count distinct. Before we wrap up this practical class, we'll see this final aspect of the count. As we have discussed, whenever we perform the count on the whole data frame, Spark will count the null values as well. But when you count the individual columns, the Spark will not count the null values. We'll see that. What I have done is I have manufactured one file to demonstrate this particular functionality of the Spark. Let me show that file to you so that you can get a glimpse of the file. This is how our file looks like. We have some 10 rows and there are few null values there. We'll create a data frame and see how this data frame looks like. Let me repurpose my code. Let's go here and this. Okay, I'll take this guy out. I'll give the path of this file where we have manufactured to demonstrate you guys how the count functionality works on the null values. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll copy the name of the file as well. So this is the name of the file. Okay, let's go ahead and create this data frame. Okay, we created this data frame. Let us see how our data frame looks like. This is how our data frame looks like. You can see there are some 3 columns and some null values are there in the different columns. Let's go ahead and count this whole data frame and see how many values we get. We can see when we count on a whole data frame, it is even returning all the records, whether it's null or not. Let us go ahead and count on a particular column and see how it behaves. Let us take this name column and see how it behaves. So I'll say dfr count dot select and I'll use a count and I need to provide the name of the column. Cool. And let me say show. That we'll get to know. There you go. You can see when we are counting on a whole data frame, it is not considering the null values. It will just give the count of all the records. But when you count on a one particular column, it gives us the only where there are values. In this case, you can see in the name there are 3 null values. It has discarded that and it has counted only where the values are there in the each of the cell. Wonderful. We can even change this with other column as well. Let us say company. You can see 7 again because there are 3 null values here. 1, 2, and 3. Let us count it as salary because we have two null values here. Let's complete that as well. Then there you go. Because we have only two null values, it is giving us the result as 8. Wonderful then. We have seen the important aggregation functions as a part of this hands-on class. Please do practice. Thank you.